All right, Professor Jim here, and this week we're going to talk about how strategic marketing can be used to get a job. I was thinking about how everything fits, and we talked about how it works inside of marketing a lot, right? And when we talk about marketing, what do we talk about? We talk about influence, and we talk about how we're going to create a plan to get people to do what we like. When I think about strategic marketing, I think about things in a more global sense, and I think about how I'm going to grow my business or how I'm going to grow my brand. And I'm going to position it in a sense that, it kind of evolves and it kind of becomes resilient and things like that. So the last 2 weeks, I really wanted to talk about two things that are really focused on how strategic marketing kind of works for you. This week, we're going to talk about kind of human resource management and things like that and how directly tied it is to strategic marketing. And then next week, we're going to talk about change and how important that is. So let's keep rolling here. So in theory, HR basically does seven things, right? They do recruitment and selection, they do performance management, they do learning and development, succession planning, compensation and benefits, and then they have data analytics. So what I was thinking was this really aligns with what we're trying to do, right? So they have a mission and a vision. Once they have their mission and vision, they do what? They recruit people based on the openings to job descriptions. From there, they look at how someone's doing after they're hiring, right? They're going back and they're measuring. They figure out how to improve their product, right? That product happens to be you. They look at what are we going to do if we promote them, which is kind of like inside of our world, right? It's line extensions. Compensation and benefits really goes to what? It's really the P, it's price and promotion inside of marketing. And then it's repeat, right? It's a constant cycle. As we move continuing into the next one, right, it talks a little bit about hiring, right? When we talk about hiring and recruiting and selecting, right, it's the first thing is to identify a need. Well, for you, right, we've already learned this. You already learned how to identify a need. So now what you need to do is you need to identify a job, right? Flip this. What do I want to do? Then they create a recruiting plan, which is how are they going to get people? Well, let's do the opposite. How are you going to make them find you? Well, we already know that. We're going to do a marketing plan, right? Then they do advertising. So you need to promote yourself. Then they look at the candidate's experience and they compare it to others, right? So we're comparing results during our strategic marketing plan. They do that. Then we go through the interview process and then they select you and then they start your onboarding, right? The actual path of success. And when you think of performance management, this is directly aligned with what we just learned this semester, right? It starts with the vision. This is what we want the company to do. Then it sets the goals. This is what we want to achieve. Sounds familiar? It should sound familiar. It was our business plan 101. Then there's strategic planning, and then there's business planning, right, which we know. Then you analyze the results of what you did. You adapt. You forecast what's going on. You then measure success because you're looking at this as a continuum. So you look at your results, you try to improve them, you forecast what your needs are going to be, then you measure the success, you reward, you continue, right? So if you think about it, almost every single business that we work in has some type of cycle like this. And as you learn more and more about strategic marketing and you understand what strategic marketing does, you can apply it to every department, you can apply it to every situation to your advantage. And that's the goal, right? At the end of the day, the goal is to be in your advantage. And I think that that's why I like this short, lecture is to really drive it home to you that if you take what you learned this last semester, you can keep bringing it into the workplace for you to be a better person. You think of learning and development, just the name of it tells you what. It's how you improve your strategic marketing plan. It's how you add skills to you just as you add features to your product. right? So the first thing you need to do is you need to identify needs. Makes sense? You establish your objectives. You decide how you're going to do it. You're going to conduct and deliver the training, and then you're going to evaluate the performance. Sounds a lot like an advertising plan to me, right? A marketing plan. Going to identify our needs, our target market or audience. We want to identify what we're going to hope to achieve by doing our advertising. This is just focused on training. We decide how we're going to do that training, but also how we do our advertising. We're going to do it, and then we're going to evaluate performance. It also works where? In research. This is the exact same methodology that we used for research. So now you've got two parts of the HR tool belt that you practice every day in marketing, right? Get good at this. Get good at identifying the needs, objectives, selecting your methods, delivering it, and evaluating it, and continue that continuum. Succession planning gets even deeper into a strategic marketing plan, right? So the first thing is you have to identify the key positions. What are the key positions inside a company? What's a key positioning inside of your strategic marketing plan? What do we want to achieve for our brand? What do we want to achieve for our product? Then you have to know what success looks like. So when you think about what you're trying to do inside of marketing, what do we always say? We always need to look at the end and work our way backwards, right? So now we're thinking about what does success look like? What skills do we need in order to do this? Well, we know that. What resources do we need, right? Skills is another word for resources. We have to establish our development plan. Sounds very familiar. We need to create our employee development, right? So that would be how we develop this brand in the consumer's eyes. We want to look at what's going to be needed in the future, what kind of tweaks are going to need to be made to our product, what kind of tweaks are going to be made to ourselves. And then we're going to review this process over and over and over again. Again, this is really, really simple stuff, but it keeps driving back to what we learned all semester. I really think it's important on the why I should care. Compensation and benefits falls where? Right in the price. It talks about all the things that you need to understand about your value and your worth, just as inside strategic marketing, we're talking about the product or the brand's worth and value. So you need to understand things about financial motivation, right? Which is different than compensation, which is different than policies, right? Which is different than reporting and budgeting. And are you looking at your overall function and how competitive are you in the marketplace? Your market intelligence, what research are you doing? What third-party data are you analyzing? How are you reporting this? How are you getting back to your management and letting them know what you're doing and if it's going well? Again, all of this falls into a strategic marketing plan bandwidth. We know how to do all this. We literally know how to do all this after this semester. So if you think about what you're trying to do for compensation and benefits is you want to make sure that you can attract the best talent and retain them. It's super important that you can retain them. It's great if you get good talent in, but you have to retain them. What are you trying to do with a consumer? You're trying to suck them in and get them to buy your product and service, and then you want them to buy it over and over again. Same principles apply. How do we do that? We want to know what's going on in the market. We want to know where our fit is, how competitive we are, and we want to make sure that we can afford everything, right? Because we only have a limited amount of capital, so you need to make sure that you can kind of manage that. And then the last thing, again, I said this was pretty quick, was thinking about analytics and HR analytics specifically, but how this works for you. So the first thing you need to understand is the organization that you want to try to work for. And that's where you got to do all the research you can. And then you have to understand what you read. Okay, so one of the things that I did was I wrote a little blog a few months ago, helping a student trying to understand what kind of company they were looking for. And as I read all these job descriptions, I realized that I was basically reading ads, right? These people were trying to sell me to help this person apply for these jobs. So you need to understand the organization. One of the great ways to do that is to read their job description. Are they looking for somebody that doesn't exist? they have to have all these skills, but really boils down to having 3 or 4? Or are they realistic in saying, hey, I need you to be proficient in A, B, and C, and that's good enough? And then as you're going through the analytics, what do we always say? Is you have to understand the numbers that you're looking at. And then once you understand those numbers or the data, you want to prepare it. Well, how do you prepare it? Well, you prepare it to be presented. So you start to pull it out, and it starts to get laid out, and it starts to formulate a plan, right? Prepare the data, just like we're doing after we do research, just like we're doing after we run our advertising and things like that. We're preparing the data. Then we have to analyze and interpret it. Then we have to evaluate it. And then the most important thing is we have to communicate it. And then as you understand this model, right, and there's different phases of your career, you'll be in different areas here. You keep pulling it back to me. Like, why should I care? Well, I need to understand if I'm going to work for a company, what do they do? How do they do it? Right? What does the data say? Are they financially stable? Are they not financially stable? Where do they fit in the marketplace? How do I start to measure and rank this type of stuff? How do I, prepare myself so that if I'm going in for an interview, I have the facts and figures? When I analyze and interpret the data, what am I doing? I'm starting to prepare my sales pitch to the organization. Remember, every interview is a two-way conversation. And if you're not having a two-way conversation, you feel you're just lucky enough to be in that interview, you're never going to get a job. You have to go in from a point of confidence that says, I earned this opportunity, I'm going to take this opportunity, and I'm going to go for it. Then you need to evaluate how the conversation's going, right? Is it going the way I want it to go? Do I need to pivot? Do I need to change my strategy if I like this opportunity? Do I not like what I'm hearing? Maybe I'm not asking the right questions. Maybe if I ask questions better or differently, I'll be hearing the answers I want to hear. Then I need to communicate with them after so that I can either get a job offer or tell them thanks but no thanks, or move on to the next opportunity. And you keep going through all this. All of these slides all bring you back to what? That it's a cycle. And as we learned with the strategic marketing plan, it is all a cycle, right? You're just going around and around and trying to keep your product in the market as long as possible. And for you, it's trying to get yourself in the best position as possible to grow your career, to achieve your career goals. And if you don't understand human resources and you don't understand strategic marketing and how they fit, it's going to be hard for you to do that. So I hope this was a good exercise. Like I said, I try to bring things back on how they should fit. If you want to talk to me, please reach out. Can't wait to talk to you about this and see how I can help launch your career. This is Jim. Have a great day.